There's a person in your life who is almost never wrong. Not because they're smarter than you, not because they know more, but somehow, every time you push back, every time you try to hold your ground, you end up looking like the problem. You've probably wondered what it is about them, why it always goes that way. Schopenhauer had an answer for that. He spent years watching how people actually argue, not in philosophy halls, in real life. And what he found was that most people aren't trying to find the truth, they're trying to win. And they've developed very specific ways of doing that, none of which have anything to do with whether they're right. He cataloged 38 of them. We covered 4 in a previous video, but there are 5 more that are just as common, and in some ways harder to catch. What most people don't know is that he never intended for any of this to be published. Schopenhauer wrote this book and then put it away, not because he wasn't proud of it, but because what he'd written was too honest. He sat down and cataloged exactly how people manipulate, deceive, and maneuver their way through arguments, and when he was done, he looked at what he had and decided the world probably wasn't ready for it. He never published it in his lifetime, because this wasn't a book about how to think better. It was a book about what people actually do. And what they actually do, Schopenhauer concluded, is almost never about finding the truth. It's about winning, at any cost, by any means available. He called it eristic dialectic, the art of being right even when you're wrong. And the reason it still matters now, sitting in a conversation you didn't ask for with a person who has no interest in honest exchange, is because nothing has changed. The tactics he wrote down in the 1800s are the same ones being used on you today. At work, at home, in relationships, in rooms where the truth should have mattered and somehow never did. But there's something underneath all of this that Schopenhauer never fully explained. Because knowing that people argue to win doesn't tell you why some people are so relentless about it, why they'll keep going long after the argument should have ended, why it feels so personal even when it shouldn't. Nietzsche had an answer for that. He called it ressentiment, and it's worth understanding because it changes how you see the person across from you. It's what happens inside someone who has learned that they can't compete on merit, not just in one conversation, but in general, over time. And rather than sitting with that, rather than doing the work to actually get better, they find another way. They convert that feeling into something else, into a quiet, persistent need to bring down whoever makes them feel it. It's not anger exactly, it's more calculated than that. It's the decision, conscious or not, that if they can't rise, they'll pull. And that's what you're actually dealing with when these tactics show up. Not someone who got carried away in an argument. Someone who came in with a different goal than you did entirely. So what does that look like when it's happening in front of you? Because most people feel it but can't see it clearly enough to stop it. There are 5 moves Schopenhauer identified, and each one is more deliberate than you'd think. The first one is predict dire consequences. You make a point, a reasonable one, and instead of responding to it, they take it somewhere you never intended. They attach an ending to your argument that you never claimed. You suggest a change at work, and suddenly you're being told the whole department will fall apart. You raise a concern in a relationship, and somehow you're now the person who wants everything to fail. You share an opinion, and before you finish the sentence, someone is already describing the disaster that follows from it. That's not a counterargument, that's a detour. They've taken your point, invented a destination for it, and now you're standing there trying to explain a future you never described. And here's why it works. It sounds like logic. It has the shape of cause and effect, but if you actually look at the steps between what you said and the catastrophe they're describing, there are none. Just a leap, a big one, dressed up as reasoning. So you spend the next 10 minutes defending something you never said, and your original point never gets touched. The second one is wear you down. There's no logic here, no new evidence, no actual argument, just the same point repeated, over and over, with enough conviction that it starts to feel like you're the one missing something. You've already explained your position clearly, and they come back with, "I already told you why that doesn't work," or "We're going in circles and you know it." Not as a counter-argument, just as a way to keep you there until you stop. They don't need to be right, they just need you to get tired before they do. And it works because most people confuse endurance with correctness. The longer someone holds a position, the more it starts to feel like they must know something you don't. So you start to soften, start to wonder, start to look for the compromise that ends the conversation. That's not you coming around to their point, that's you running out of energy. There's a difference, and they're counting on you not noticing it. The third one is the false concession. This one is harder to catch than the others because it doesn't feel like an attack, it feels like progress. They agree with you, actually say the words, "You're right, fair point, I can see where you're coming from." And for a moment the tension drops, you think the conversation has moved somewhere. Then the but arrives, and everything that follows it quietly undoes everything that came before it. You're right, but that's not really how it works in practice. Fair point, but have you considered this? I can see where you're coming from, but realistically, one qualification, then another, each one reasonable on its own, but by the end, the yes they gave you means nothing. Your point is still standing there, it just has so much weight on top of it that nobody can see it anymore. They didn't argue with you, they buried you in agreement. The fourth one is demand precision. This one doesn't come at you directly, it comes at your words. You make a point, and instead of engaging with it, they stop you. What exactly do you mean by that? Define your terms. That's a pretty vague statement. And it sounds like a fair request, like they actually want to understand you better. But watch what happens. You stop to clarify, you find different words, they question those too. What do you mean by that exactly? The original point disappears, not because anyone proved it wrong, but because you never got to finish making it. The trap is simple. Most people feel obligated to answer a question when it's asked. It feels rude not to. So you answer. And then the next one. Each one pulling you further from where you started. They never had to engage with your argument. They just had to keep asking until you lost the thread yourself. It's not about understanding you. It's about making sure your point never lands. The fifth one is rapid-fire questioning. This one comes at you fast. Before you finished answering one question, there's another and another, each time dragging you further off your footing. It feels like curiosity, like they're genuinely trying to understand. But if you step back and look at what's happening, none of the questions are building on your answers. They're not listening to what you say, they're just loading the next one. Because the questions aren't the point, the pace is. At that speed, you can't think clearly. You start giving half answers, incomplete ones, and those incomplete answers become the thing they argue against. Not your actual position, but the fragmented version of it you gave under pressure. You didn't lose the argument, you got rushed out of it. Here's the thing, none of this means you're weak for falling for it. These tactics work because you're approaching the conversation honestly. You're trying to make a point, answer a question, find some common ground. That's not naivety, that's just what good faith looks like. And good faith is exactly what these moves are designed to exploit. The person using them isn't better at arguing, they're just not playing the same game you are. You're trying to get somewhere, they're trying to make sure you don't. That asymmetry is the whole thing. And once you see it for what it is, it stops feeling like a failure on your part. But seeing it doesn't switch off the reaction either. You'll still feel the pull. The difference is that now you can recognize what's happening before you've already gone somewhere you didn't choose to go. Most people never stop to ask why. They just walk away from these conversations feeling like something went wrong and never figure out what. The fact that you're even trying to understand it puts you ahead of almost everyone in that moment. So what do you actually do when you're in it? Schopenhauer was direct about this. He didn't leave it at observation. He left a set of very specific answers. The first thing is to expose the leap. When someone takes your point and attaches a disaster to it, don't defend the disaster. That's the trap. The moment you start explaining why the catastrophe they invented isn't going to happen, you've already accepted their version of your argument. Instead, ask them to show you the steps. How exactly do we get from what I said to what you're describing? Make them walk you through it, because there are no steps. There never are. And when they can't produce them, the whole thing collapses on its own. You didn't argue against it, you just asked them to finish the thought they started. The second thing is to stop feeding it. When someone is wearing you down, repeating the same point with more conviction each time, the instinct is to keep responding, to find a new way to explain yourself, to make them understand. But every response you give is fuel. It tells them the approach is working, that if they just keep going, you'll eventually find the compromise that ends the conversation. Schopenhauer was blunt about this. Some conversations aren't worth finishing, not because you've lost, but because continuing them costs you something you don't get back. You're allowed to put it down, not dramatically, not as a statement, just quietly, cleanly, without needing it to be resolved. That's not weakness. That's a decision about where your energy actually belongs. The third thing is to hold them to the yes. When someone concedes your point and then starts qualifying it, don't follow them into the qualifications. That's where your point gets buried. Instead, go back to the concession. You just agreed with me. Start there. Make them explicitly take it back rather than quietly erode it with conditions. Because here's what the false concession relies on, that you'll be so relieved by the agreement that you won't notice what's being done to it. The yes feels like progress, so you keep moving forward while they're undoing everything behind you. The moment you name the concession out loud and hold them to it, the tactic has nowhere to go. The fourth thing is to refuse to redefine. When someone keeps asking you to define your terms, don't keep finding new words. That's the hole they're pulling you into. Each time you reach for a different way to say the same thing, you're moving further from your original point and deeper into their territory. Restate the point as you made it. Not a new version of it, not a simplified version, the same point. Because what they're counting on is that you'll keep adjusting until the argument you're making isn't recognizable anymore, even to you. If there's something specific they disagree with, ask them to name it. Because precision isn't the issue, engagement is. They don't want clarity, they want you chasing it. And until they engage with what you actually said, there is nothing to clarify. The fifth thing is to slow it down. When the questions come fast, one after another before you finished answering the last, don't try to keep up. That pace is the point. At that speed, you're not thinking clearly, you're just reacting. And the fragmented answers you give under pressure become the thing they argue against. You're allowed to answer one question at a time, completely. Take the first one, finish it, and don't move to the next until you're ready. If they push, I'm still on your first question. That's not evasion, that's just refusing to be rushed out of your own argument. The whole tactic depends on the pace. Take the pace away, and there's nothing left. There's a version of you that walks into these conversations tomorrow and sees exactly what's happening. Not after the fact, not in the car on the way home replaying it, in the moment. That's what's different now. And the people who've been using these moves, they rely on you not seeing it. That's the whole game. The confusion, the exhaustion, the feeling that somehow you ended up on the wrong side of an argument you were winning. All of it depends on you staying in the dark. You're not in the dark anymore. That changes who has the advantage in that room. And it changes what you're willing to spend your energy on and who actually deserves it.